is pouring in from China, and I had a deal with President Xi. He was going to give the death penalty to anybody manufacturing fentanyl in China and selling it to the United States.
Tonight, troubling global ties following a massive money laundering bust. Authorities connecting Mexico's infamous Sinaloa drug cartel to an underground Chinese banking group.
Significant concerns are emerging as U.S. authorities uncover a complex international network linking China-based chemical suppliers to Mexico's Sinaloa cartel. The investigation began after federal agents connected a major money laundering scheme to a Chinese underground banking group that had been quietly operating inside Georgia. What seemed at first like isolated cash movements soon revealed a coordinated system supporting fentanyl and meth distribution across the East Coast. The turning point came when Homeland Security agents arrested a 48-year-old courier in a suburban shopping center in Georgia. To bystanders, he looked like an ordinary man loading water into an SUV. In reality, federal investigators have been tracking him for nearly a year. His movements, late-night drives, and discreet exchanges pointed to a far deeper criminal structure. Agents approached calmly, but within moments, multiple officers surrounded him, confirmed his identity, and took him into custody. Most people nearby had no idea they were witnessing a key arrest linked to an $85 million narcotics pipeline. The man was not a laborer or low-level accomplice. He was a bridge between cartel traffickers and Chinese financial brokers embedded within Georgia's Asian, Latino, and logistics communities. Although the arrest looked minor, it marked the first break in a network stretching far beyond the state. Investigators believe the information obtained from this operation could expose drug labs hidden in upscale suburbs and reveal a financial system more advanced than previously understood. And soon, those leads would guide agents directly into ordinary neighborhoods that concealed far more than anyone imagined. By the time news of the arrest spread online, federal agents were already executing the next phase of the investigation. The courier had not been delivering packages to rundown warehouses or abandoned commercial lots. Instead, his regular stops were in well-maintained communities in Gwinnett County, Johns Creek, and Alpharetta, areas known for highly rated schools, organized neighborhoods, and quiet streets. When search teams entered these homes, even experienced DEA personnel were stunned. Behind the facades of large suburban houses were fully operational drug manufacturing sites. Living rooms had been stripped and refitted with stainless steel tables. Bedrooms held chemical drying stations. Attics were filled with ventilation pipes and noise-suppressed machinery. Entire basements were lined with reflective insulation to mask heat signatures. Neighbors had occasionally reported odd sounds, believing they were hearing air conditioners or home repairs. In reality, they were listening to fentanyl production systems working around the clock. Investigators found precursor chemicals shipped through Atlanta's International Airport, often disguised as industrial materials. Once inside the state, the supplies disappeared into suburban properties where operations could continue unnoticed for months. At one location in Johns Creek, agents discovered enough raw fentanyl to potentially kill the entire population of Georgia several times over. Officials described the facilities as highly organized and unusually discreet, drug manufacturing sites disguised with the precision of legitimate residences. And yet, the labs represented only the surface layer of what the investigation was about to reveal. Behind them was an expanding network that stretched across the state, prompting federal officials to prepare for one of the most extensive coordinated operations in Georgia's history. As agents continued to process the suburban lab discoveries, federal command authorized a statewide operation. Officials feared that if they waited any longer, the distribution network would grow too large to contain. In the early hours of September 18th, multiple agencies, including the DEA, FBI, Homeland Security, ATF, and the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, launched a synchronized sweep across the state. Digital maps in command centers highlighted nearly 140 targets. Each represented a lab, stash site, broker office, or safe house. The objective was clear: strike every location before sunrise to prevent communication or escape. The first operations began in Gwinnett County, where armored vehicles moved into quiet cul-de-sacs. Agents breached front doors with coordinated precision, startling neighborhoods unaccustomed to such activity. In one home, technicians attempted to discard chemicals as agents closed in, only to encounter heavily armed federal officers. In Macon, teams confronted a fortified stash house with steel-reinforced walls. Suspects deployed small diversion devices in an effort to delay entry, but officers pushed through and subdued them despite thick chemical fumes. Further east, in Augusta, agents intercepted a 4-vehicle convoy traveling toward the state line, triggering a tense highway encounter involving spike strips, tactical vehicles, and aerial support. Savannah was hit next. A group of nearly 30 suspects barricaded themselves inside a riverside warehouse and opened fire as officers approached. After several minutes, federal teams breached a secondary entrance and secured the building. By the end of the week-long surge, authorities had arrested more than 1,000 suspects, seized over 12 tons of narcotics, and recovered hundreds of firearms. It was one of the largest coordinated operations ever carried out in Georgia. Even with record arrests and massive seizures, investigators quickly realized the operation had only exposed part of a much broader system. As evidence was reviewed, attention shifted toward a single hub that appeared repeatedly across shipping records, financial trails, and courier routes. Hartsfield, Jackson Atlanta International Airport, the busiest airport in the world. For years, the airport had functioned as a symbol of global commerce, moving millions of passengers and tons of cargo each day. But those same strengths made it an ideal point of entry for organized crime. In late 2023, analysts noticed a significant spike in shipments labeled as industrial solvents arriving from major Chinese export cities. Though the materials appeared harmless on paper, chemical testing revealed that many were actually the building blocks used to manufacture synthetic narcotics. With thousands of cargo pallets passing through the airport daily, traffickers exploited gaps created by shift changes, limited staffing, and complex logistics. Once cleared, precursor chemicals were rapidly transported by truck to suburban production sites or rerouted south toward Florida and west into neighboring states. At the same time, the airport had become a departure point for methamphetamine exports headed to Asia. Smugglers favored Atlanta because direct flights provided access to high-profit markets such as Australia, Japan, and South Korea. A single pound of high-purity meth, valued at hundreds of dollars in Georgia, could be sold for more than $200,000 overseas. Couriers recruited from nightlife districts in Atlanta were offered large payments to carry concealed shipments on international flights. Investigators came to a troubling conclusion. The airport was no longer simply a transit location the cartel exploited. It had become a central component of a global distribution network, allowing traffickers to bypass traditional West Coast routes that had recently come on. As investigators continued tracing the supply routes, an even more critical layer of the operation emerged. The drugs and chemicals moving through Georgia were only one part of the system. The money flowing beneath the surface, the financial infrastructure keeping the network alive, proved far more intricate and far harder to track. The cartel had partnered with Chinese underground banking groups, financial networks designed to operate outside traditional institutions. These systems allowed traffickers to move large sums of money quickly, anonymously, and across multiple countries without triggering banking alerts. What appear to be small businesses scattered across the state were, in many cases, key components of this laundering operation. In Norcross, a logistics company that advertised ordinary freight services was found to be transporting containers filled with bundled cash rather than commercial goods. Millions of dollars were discovered in boxes labeled as office supplies. In Duluth, Chamblee, and Midtown Atlanta, nail salons and spas served as ideal fronts. Their high cash volumes made it easy to blend illicit deposits with legitimate earnings. Audits revealed revenue patterns that did not match customer activity, and some businesses made nightly deposits aligned with cartel payment schedules. Further investigation in Chambly uncovered a token-based exchange system operating inside karaoke venues. Patrons purchased tokens that functioned as entertainment currency, but the money was routed through digital channels to accounts in China and Canada. It was then mirrored back into Mexico through shadow markets, completing a cycle that functioned entirely outside formal banking oversight. The most complex discovery came from a logistics company registered to a shell corporation in Tucker. Records showed more than 50 cargo containers processed over 2 years, many containing concealed U.S. currency or precursor chemicals mislabeled as harmless materials. While federal agencies reviewed the financial evidence, the human impact across Georgia became increasingly visible. Although officials celebrated the success of the operation, many residents experienced a very different reality. Communities that once felt stable and predictable were now marked by fear, uncertainty, and lingering damage left behind by an organization that had quietly taken root around them. In cities like Duluth, Chambly, and Norcross, small businesses that previously relied on regular foot traffic had begun operating behind locked doors. Owners kept entryways secured even during business hours, allowing customers in only after recognizing them. These precautions were not sparked by typical crime trends, but by concerns about law enforcement raids, retaliation from traffickers, or being associated, fairly or unfairly, with a larger investigation. Parents in several counties reported new risks facing their children. Teenagers were being targeted by recruiters who promised quick money for simple career tasks. Social media accounts highlighted extravagant lifestyles, drawing in young people who often did not understand the nature of the work. Some minors became involved in high-speed chases or were found transporting counterfeit pills. Schools reported increased cases of overdoses, anxiety, and unexplained absences tied to trafficking pressures. Residents in parts of East Atlanta, South Cobb, and Clarkston described their neighborhoods becoming quiet zones where people avoided walking outside after dark. The concern was no longer tied to traditional gang activity, but to uncertainty about who might be involved with a network that had operated silently next door. Ordinary interactions, hesitation at a doorway, a suspicious glance, or even lingering on a sidewalk, were enough to create tension. Overdose deaths in the state surged, with thousands of fatalities in a single year, many tied to counterfeit drugs manufactured in the suburban labs. Funeralo. In the aftermath of the statewide operations, one reality became unmistakable. This case was never just about drugs or trafficking routes. It was a warning about how deeply a criminal network can embed itself when it operates quietly, strategically, and without drawing attention. The cartel did not rely on visible violence to build its presence in Georgia. Instead, it used ordinary locations, residential neighborhoods, small businesses, and busy transportation hubs to construct a system that blended into everyday life. Although federal agencies succeeded in dismantling the immediate infrastructure, the long-term effects remain apparent. Families lost loved ones to overdoses linked to counterfeit pills. Business owners closed their doors, unable to recover from financial disruptions or community suspicion. Neighborhoods that once felt safe now take precautions that were unheard of only a few years earlier. Many residents have adopted habits, such as securing multiple locks, avoiding nighttime walks, and watching their surroundings more carefully. Yet the investigation also highlighted an important strength within the state: the willingness of communities to pay attention and speak up when something feels out of place. Authorities emphasized that the network thrived in secrecy and declined when residents shared information, reported unusual activity, and stayed alert to changes in their surroundings. Increased awareness made it harder for the organization to operate unnoticed. Rebuilding will take time, and the scars left behind are significant. But investigators and community leaders agree that recovery begins with transparency and vigilance. The more people understand the signs of illegal activity, the more effectively they can help prevent similar networks from forming in the future. The operations serve as a reminder that threats do not always arrive from distant regions. They can grow quietly in familiar areas, using the most ordinary settings as cover. As George, in the closing phase of the investigation, a broader message emerged. The success of law enforcement depends on public awareness. The case demonstrated how a large criminal enterprise was able to expand not because it was especially visible, but because it operated in ways that appeared ordinary. Residential homes became production sites. Legitimate businesses functioned as financial fronts, and one of the world's busiest airports unintentionally became a supply channel. These developments were possible because the activity blended seamlessly into daily life. Federal agencies emphasized that while the major components of the network had been dismantled, the conditions that allowed it to grow must not be ignored. Communities play a central role in identifying irregularities, whether it is unusual traffic at a residence, inconsistent business operations, or unexplained shipments moving through local facilities. Investigators noted that several breakthroughs in the case began with small observations made by residents who sensed something was wrong. Moving forward, authorities plan to strengthen outreach efforts, improve communication with local communities, and increase cooperation across state and federal levels. The goal is to create a more resilient environment where complex trafficking operations cannot rebuild or evolve unnoticed. Public information campaigns, school awareness programs, and expanded training for local businesses are expected to form part of this strategy. Ultimately, the case underscored a fundamental truth. Safety depends not only on enforcement, but on informed communities that remain engaged and vigilant. The dismantling of the network marks a significant achievement, yet it also serves as a reminder that similar threats can emerge wherever opportunity exists. By understanding the methods used in this operation, residents and officials alike can help prevent future networks from gaining a foothold. Georgia now faces the long process of Recove. Single Insider exists for one reason: to expose the hidden machinery operating beneath the surface of everyday life. This is the place where shadows are dissected, systems are unraveled, and the truth, no matter how buried, finds a way to the light. In an age where information is twisted, diluted, and manipulated, Single Insider steps past the noise and goes directly to the real engine room of crime, corruption, covert deals, and institutional failure. This channel does not tell ordinary stories. It reconstructs the kind of operations that powerful people prefer to keep buried. Every investigation crafted here follows a single principle: nothing happens without a network supporting it. A cartel shipment does not move without an insider. A corrupt officer does not rise without protection. A region does not collapse without warning signs. Single Insider follows these threads with precision, uncovering how one decision, one loophole, or one compromised official can trigger a domino effect capable of destabilizing entire communities. This channel specializes in deep dive breakdowns of criminal networks, financial corruption, hidden pipelines, and systemic failures that shape real-world outcomes. Whether the story begins at a quiet seaport, a busy border crossing, a corrupt management office, or a failed political decision, Single Insider shows the entire chain of events, every link, every player, every consequence. The channel goes beyond headlines, beyond rumors, and far beyond the shallow surface-level information most audiences are used to consuming. Single Insider builds narratives out of real patterns, real evidence, and real-world logic. These are not fictional stories. These are reconstructions of operations that operate in silence while the world sleeps. Operations that attach themselves to weak institutions, broken leadership, blind trust, and the vulnerabilities that criminals exploit with surgical accuracy.